This episode broke a lot of my expectations. I don't even know where to begin. First off, I have to address a concerning matter. Seeing Urukadaki, I tried. Seeing him again made me think of the good times. You know when Tanjiro had friends? Where are Zenitsu and Inosuke? I miss those guys. Just drop a minute of screen time for these degenerates. Shattered Expectation 1. Tanjiro's short training. The vast majority of this episode is focused on Tokito, which is a good thing because I'm a fan of the character, unlike how I was previously. However, we don't get to see much of Tanjiro's training in this episode. I thought that this would be the bulk of the episode, to be honest. We get more time with Tanjiro reacting to a multitude of things Tokito does in this episode than the scene of him going at it with Tokito. It was sufficient, but I guess I was hoping for a bit more. Shattered Expectation 2. Tokito is unhinged. I knew Tokito was cold-blooded, but I had no idea that this man was unhinged. He is training all of the corps members, pointing out the flaws in their games, while low-key insulting them. I'm a dick. I laughed hysterically at this guy's reaction. Sure, this is necessary, bearing in mind that Tokito has actually fought an upper-rank demon. He knows at first hand that if these guys go in there with a half-assed resolve, that they are gonna be dead. It's not the most ideal teaching method for everyone, but it's completely justified. At this point, I thought it all came from a place of love up until this scene.
やっぱり緊張感が足りないな。一度真剣で稽古してみようか。真剣持ってきて。
Tokito is a dick for this one. Do you see that he says this and the expression on his face barely changes? Have you no compassion, man? Look at this guy's anxiety-filled face barely clasping onto that sword. You know things are bad when Tanjiro isn't smiling. Tokito even eggs on this guy to attack him, and he just stands still with no expression like this is a standard procedure. Later on, we find out that there's more to this than meets the eye. Shattered Expectation 3, Tokito joins Windy and Snakey. I want to see a full fight between Windy and Snakey because that was the best 10 seconds I've had in a while. Why'd you cut this so quick? This is where Tokito jumps into the scene. The thing that we must take into consideration when looking back at all of his interactions with the corps members in this episode is not only is he running an entire training camp himself, he also has some hard training at night with Windy and Snakey. This must be tough on him, not only physically, but mentally as well, which is why I'll excuse the sword scene. In this instance, hard training is these two deciding to 2-on-1 him. Tokito jumps in, and the pace on this lad is simply remarkable. This is where the shattered expectation comes from. Is he stronger than these two? Up until this point, I've been assuming that the Hashira we have seen fight
are more than likely weaker than the ones we haven't seen fight.
After this short bit of action, I really want to see him scrap again. These Hashira were cooking, but Eyeball upper rank seem to be onto their movements, so we'll see how things develop. Shattered Expectation 4, the most unlikely hobby. Look at this character. What kind of hobbies do you think he would be interested in? Hairstyling because of the green highlights? Tea because, well, tea. Especially considering his personality, the last thing I was expecting Tokito to be into was paper airplanes. The last thing I was expecting for this episode was for it to become a paper airplane tossing competition. Tanjiro challenges Tokito to a 10 round of paper airplane tossing on the condition that if he wins, Tokito will be a bit more delicate with the corps members. If we can learn anything from the results of this competition, it's this. Never challenge anybody with an obscure hobby to a competition. They have no incentive to lie about how good they are because their hobby gives them no clout whatsoever. They will demolish you. I'm speaking from personal experience. The other Demon Slayers show interest in throwing paper airplanes, so everyone joins in for this final hurrah. It's such a simple scene, but it was incredibly heartfelt. While these guys are fighting demons, they got to remember their humanity, and sometimes that's standing on a field with the boys, tossing paper airplanes into the sky to see whose plane lands the furthest. This all adds credit to Tanjiro. He seems to be the only one on his camp to be able to put a smile on Tokito's face. Now he has put smiles on the whole camp's faces, just because they're allowed to loosen up for a second. Tokito sends off Tanjiro, reaffirming that they need to beat Muzan. At this point, I like this character. This whole journey we've gone through with him in this episode made me understand him more. You know, when I think of Tokito, the last word that comes to mind is wholesome. However, this was one of the most wholesome episodes in Demon Slayer. Speaking of wholesome, aren't these two the best situationship waiting to happen? She's grabbing on him like there's no tomorrow. Tits is up on the Hashira training, and if they do a good job with her, as they did with Tokito in this episode, then I'll put some respect on her name.